Okay. Um, so today the plan is I need to discuss a bit more on Dijkstra's algorithm, especially in particular the some implementational details, and then we will switch on to another algorithm for finding shortest path, which would be the main topic of today's lecture. Um, but before that, let's talk a bit about the implementation of Dijkstra's algorithm. Okay, so if you recall from the next lecture, the way we had described Dijkstra's algorithm is the following: that remember we always maintain these two sets of vertices. One is S, and the other is, let's say, S bar. And the idea is that in every iteration, I will suitably pick some vertex from V minus S and I will put it in S. Yeah. So the first vertex to enter the set S is, of course, the source, which is small s. And the punchline is that whenever I include any vertex in the set S, then I should have uh, correctly computed its shortest path from S. Okay, so the shortest path label for that vertex is not going to change ever again in the subsequent iterations. Yeah, and we prove that why this. Okay, by the way, so what is the greedy choice? So remember, Dijkstra's is a greedy algorithm. So what is the greedy choice that we are making? Um, well, we are looking at essentially the following quantity, which is so let's say there is some vertex in S which is U, and there are other vertices in V minus S. So if I am testing an edge, the quantity that I'm looking at is, if this is V, then I'm looking at the current level of, okay, let's call this dist of U plus the length of this edge, which is LUV. Okay, and whichever among my edges give me the minimum of this quantity, that's the edge that I choose to include, or in other words, the other endpoint of this edge is what I choose to include in my set S. And we continue in this fashion till the point every vertex becomes part of S. Okay, or there are no other edges to consider. They are both equivalent. Yeah, means assuming a connected graph and all that. Okay, so but now let's talk about how to implement this algorithm, right? I need a fast implementation of this algorithm, and it would be again in the very similar spirit to the way we had done a faster implementation of Prim's algorithm. Okay, now the point is that although I'm describing the algorithm as selecting an edge and including it in the shortest path tree, or including in the shortest path computation, what we really care about, remember, is how to include a vertex in my new set. Okay, so here is how, in an abstract way, here is how we do it. So initially, I would have included the vertex small s into my set, and I would initialize the distance of this, not initialize, I will mark the distance of s as 0. And this is clearly correct because the distance of s from s itself is, of course, 0. And for everybody else, I will mark the distance as infinity. Okay, and the idea is that over the iterations, this distance label is going to only decrease. Yeah, and once this becomes part of capital S, then it will just stop decreasing, and we return that as the shortest path. Okay, so here is how we do it. So at every iteration, all we do is we simply extract the vertex that has the minimum possible label. Okay, so out of all the vertices that are currently present in the set V minus S, I am selecting the one which has the minimum possible label. I am adding that to my set S, but now I have to do some modifications, right? Because remember, as soon as I am picking a vertex from V minus S and I'm including it to S, then potentially a lot of new edges are getting exposed to me. Those are the edges which I have not considered ever before in my previous iterations. Okay, so I must update the label of certain vertices on the basis of these newly exposed edges. So for instance, here if I add V to this side, so suppose karo ki aisa tha, so maybe V had some edges like that. Yeah, these three edges. So as soon as you bring V here, these edges now get exposed to you. These are the edges which you did not consider previously. Okay, so ये जो 3 vertices है, इनका labels अब आपको update करना पड़ेगा. So how should I update it? Well, that's simple. Just that's again sort of the greedy choice that we are making. So we will update the label if and only if we see that it's actually decreasing compared to the current label that it has. Okay, so that is exactly what this operation is reflecting. Yeah, so I'm looking at this newly added vertex, which is W, and I'm looking at every edge WU that is going across the cut, and I am updating the label accordingly. Okay. Okay, but it seems like if you do a naive implementation of this thing, then it can potentially take V times E, right? Because, okay, so clearly the number of iterations is going to be mod V, because there are only mod V vertices. But for every vertex, you are potentially relaxing a lot of edges and so on and so forth. So in the worst case, this might take V times E runtime, okay? So again, how should we speed up the implementation? It's very similar to what we discussed for prims, but nonetheless. So how do we speed up the implementation? Right? Is the question. Okay, so one suggestion is that we should use a priority queue, or let's say we should use a heap. Yeah, so we should use a minimum heap. Now the question is, what should be the heap? What should the heap contain? So in Prim's algorithm, at least the way we had discussed it, it used to contain the edges, right? Because remember, at every iteration, I'm picking the minimum cost edge among the edges that are crossing over the cut. But here I'm doing a slightly smarter implementation. So what should the priority queue or the heap contain now? The idea is, so faster implementation. Use a min heap that contains vertices, right? So that should be the idea, right? Okay, so right, so initially what should I do? Well, I guess it's pretty clear that initially I should include all the vertices in my heap. Okay, so I have initialized the distances as the following, as written here. So the distance of the vertex S is 0 and the distance of everybody else is infinity. So I start with the heap containing all the vertices in my graph, because still now I have not made any choice, right? Now at every iteration, it's very clear what I need to do, right? So all I need to do is I need to do an extract min operation, and this is an operation which is defined for a heap. Yeah, in fact, that is the most important operation. We know that this can be done, and you know, after you, so extract min itself can be done in order one time, but if you want to again maintain a heap with the rest of the elements, then you have to call a heapify operation, which takes log n or log the number of elements. So effectively, I would assume that an extract min will take logarithmic time, like log of v or something. Okay, so this will be replaced by, I mean, not replaced really, but this is effectively an extract min. Okay, now what should I do? That's not the only thing that I need to do, right? So how should I modify my data structure? Yeah, update to theek hai. That's what is written here. But as far as the heap data structure is concerned, so let's see what I need to do. So suppose this is your heap, right? And this is a bit important actually. So suppose this is your heap. Yeah, remember it's an almost complete binary tree. So I always visualize a heap as a binary tree. You can visualize it in any way you like. So it's an almost complete binary tree. Now the problem here, one problem here is that, remember when I have included the vertex W to the set S, then I am adjusting the labels of a few vertices, especially those whose endpoints are crossing across the cut. So I'm looking at the edges that are newly crossing the cut, and I'm updating the distant labels potentially of the other endpoints. Now, one trouble here is that those vertices might occur anywhere in this heap. I don't know where, I mean, they are not lying at the root of this heap or something like that, right? They are arbitrary vertices and they might occur anywhere. Like one of them might be here, the other one might be here, the other one might be here, the other one might be here. कुछ भी हो सकता है. Okay. So remember, I have to now update the values of these red vertices inside my heap. So how should I do that? Heap does not allow such operations, right? So if you remember your heap from the data structure course, all it allows you to do is an extract min and an insertion. Okay, at most maybe, I don't know, yeah, effectively those two, right? Extract min and insertion. So how should I incorporate this new kind of operation in some sense and still be able to maintain a logarithmic update time for each operation? There was one function. नहीं, function भूल जाइए. How do you think we should? So what is a simple way? Okay, great. So here is one idea. So what Utkrisht is suggesting is the following, that we maintain an additional bookkeeping. So what do I mean by that? Well, I maintain an array that will effectively contain the address of every node or every pointer in the heap. Okay. So what he's suggesting, I guess, is the following, that I maintain an array. Okay. What is the size of this array? The size of this array is like mod of V. Yeah. So for each vertex, there is an entry, V1, V2, V2, V3, so forth. Okay. And now what I will do is I will simply maintain a pointer, right, in this array, which points to this particular node in the heap, the particular element V2 in the heap. And similarly for all the other elements. Okay. And now when I am trying to adjust the labels of V2, all I will do is I will access this pointer using this array. Okay. And I can directly go here. This takes only order one time. And then what should I do? So suppose ye mil gaya mujhe. Okay. So suppose I get to this pointer. Now, how should I, what does it mean to adjust the label? Can I just adjust the label and do something? Okay, so so there are many ways of doing it. You can change, yeah, you can update the value and call heapify. You can delete this node and you can insert another node with the adjusted value. So you delete V2, then you insert V2 again, but now with a different key value. The key value would be the new distance label that is getting, yeah, and you call heapify. But remember, finally, what should I do? इसके बाद भी एक चीज रह जाता है. So suppose you did all that. Suppose you updated the value of V2. Suppose you have called heapify. And now, what happens to the pointer now? Okay, so that you have to remember. So now this pointer, that should point to the new position of V2. Okay, that's very important. Otherwise, isme to wrong information hai, right? The position of V2 will not remain this one in the binary heap. You cannot say that. I mean, after you have updated the value, V2 might have moved to other parts of the tree or other parts of the heap. So now you should adjust your pointer to be able to do that. Okay. So by this simple additional bookkeeping, effectively, you can also carry out deletion operations of arbitrary nodes in your heap. And this is a general idea anyway. I mean, you can use this in other implementations as well. Okay. So effectively, we are augmenting the heap with an additional bookkeeping, which maintains the address of every possible node in the heap. And this does not take too much space, right? It's only order the number of elements in the heap. Okay. Clear to everyone? So this is how you can carry out all the operations in logarithmic time. Okay. Okay. So now the question is, what is the effective runtime now? What is going to be the running time of this operation? So even if I, let's say, do all this heap thing and smart implementation, what is the running time? Okay, it's E log V plus V. So okay, plus V, though we understand we need a plus V to do the initialization and all that in order to insert the elements in the heap. So why should this be E log V? I mean, it still seems like that there are V number of iterations, and you are relaxed, sort of you are looking at every edge once and then you are carrying out. So why should this be E log V? Okay, so yeah, each heap operation will effectively take log V time. But why? What we have to convince ourselves now is that we are only doing E number of heap operations, or order E number of heap operations. So why is that true? I mean, if I count loops, that's clearly not true, right? So why do you think I can still say that? Okay, so here is the final punchline. The point is, if you start counting loops, then of course you will get a much worse runtime, right? And that's not the correct way to analyze this algorithm or analyze this implementation. The correct way to analyze this implementation is the following: that you count the total number of times one edge is considered. So if you look at any edge in your graph, how many times is it really considered? It's only considered once. Okay, once and never again. और वो कब हो रहा है? Well, remember again this picture. So suppose there is an edge like that. Okay, so this is W and this is U. The only time in your entire implementation when this edge is going to be considered is when W is brought to this side. Okay, so only for that particular iteration you are considering this edge, you are potentially updating the label of U, and that takes order log V time to do the updates and deletions and whatever we have discussed. But the punchline is that in this entire course of algorithm, every edge is considered exactly once. Okay, so for updating as a result of a particular edge, we need log V. There are E many edges, so which is why the total number of operations is going to be order E times log V. Okay, so every edge considered exactly once, plus order log V operations per edge. Okay, so this gives us the E log V runtime that we have cleared. Okay, clear to everyone? Any question? Any other question about Dijkstra? Okay, great. All right. So then let's move on to our main topic of discussion, which is the next algorithm that we're going to study for computing shortest paths. For every edge, can you please explain those pointers once? Okay. So what is the pointer doing? Okay, so here is what we are saying, right? That okay, good. Yeah, we can do this again. So let's do it fresh. Okay, so first of all, to answer Kevin's question, right? So remember, I have this heap, right? Okay, so it's an almost complete binary tree. Now, suppose that you have brought some vertex W to the left-hand side. So now you have to effectively test these edges, right? That's what your algorithm will do. Yeah. So this is, let's say, V1, this is V2, and this is V3. So all these are still part of the heap because all these are still part of V minus S. So they are part of the heap because you have inserted everybody in the heap during initialization. Yeah, and they have some labels. So when you included W, right, these might be lying somewhere in your heap, right? So maybe this is V1. Okay. So maybe this is V1, this is V2, and this is V3, right? Now, when you consider this edge, then हो सकता है कि you need to now decrease the or update the distance label of suppose V2, right? So the question is, how do you carry out this updation operation in order log V time? The trouble is that a heap itself does not allow you to access arbitrary nodes. If you go back to your heap data structure, heap okay, am I back now? So Soham says I got muted. Yeah, I don't know why. Okay, good. Right. So delete and insert. Aha. Okay. So now the point is the way we have to handle updation of a value. This is not something which the heap data structure itself gives me, right? That's not the point of using a heap. So we need to use some sort of some combination of known operations in order to be able to do that. And here the combination that we want to use is we want to delete that and we want to reinsert the node with an updated value. Okay, so that is fine. These two can be done in order log V time. Yeah, I know that deletion you can do. You can delete and call heapify. You can essentially you can delete and reinsert and call heapify. So that will take order log V time. The main problem is how do you even access this node? That is not clear because the only access that we have as far as the heap data structure is concerned is the root node, which is the minimum one. You can only access and extract min. So in this case, you have to maintain a additional bookkeeping, which is a pointer to this particular vertex. For every node, we have to, yeah. Right. Yeah, Kevin. So, yeah. So you can use all those smartnesses. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You are saying that, okay, we are maintaining the graph anyway. So why don't I keep a pointer? All I'm saying is you need these additional pointers. Yeah, you still need order V extra pointers, right? Whether you keep an additional array or not, that's your implementation choice. Okay. Yeah. The additional thing is not needed. So you can just, what I'm saying is you can keep a pointer from every vertex. Okay, good. Okay, now about the time complexity. So Soham is asking, okay, Alok is asking, can't we push all the edges in the heap? So Alok, pushing all the edges, I don't know if that works. There might be a way to make it work, but no, that's okay. But how do you, it's not clear because remember here when we are extracting, so we are not extracting the, so what is going to be the key of an edge is the question. Yeah, maybe there is a way to do this. Is the same way you are doing prims, maybe. So you maintain a key on every edge, right? Which is maybe the distance of the other endpoint plus the length of this edge. But I think it's slightly confusing or maybe not. Yeah, probably you can do that as well. Yeah. Okay, but I think this is a cleaner way to handle it. Yeah, you just extract the minimum distant vertex. Yeah. Okay, so now back to the running time. So Soham, what we are saying is the following, that every edge will potentially trigger some heap operations, but what we have discussed so far is every edge triggers only constantly many heap operations, right? So if yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't know how to solve this problem. Okay, so when was the last time I was heard? Yeah, whatever. Okay, so yeah, so effectively what we are saying is that, you know, every edge is considered exactly once in the entire operation, and every time you consider an edge, you are triggering only order log v many operations. So which is why the runtime is e times log v. So you have to look at the whole algorithm together. You cannot do this, like you cannot count loops and claim this, is what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Log off. No, if I log off, then the entire thing will go down. So I don't know how to solve this problem. Uh, okay, let me pause the video. Yeah, I know I'm back, but the issue is I'm going back and forth, which is not good. Hmm. Okay, I don't know. Let's try. If this persists, then I don't know. We have to do something else. अच्छा, अभी ठीक है ना? Hmm. Okay, so yeah, let me just remain close to my computer. Okay, so the first question you should ask at this point is, why do we care about another shortest path algorithm? So we have studied in fact, a very, very efficient algorithm to compute shortest path. It works in time, which is E times log E or E times log V essentially, which is perhaps the best that you can do. Because if you think about it, even if I ask you to sort the edges, you need E log E time. So E log V is like kind of the golden benchmark for most graph algorithms, except BFS and DFS. Those take really linear time. But any other non-trivial algorithm is going to take sort of V times log E or something like that. Yeah. So why do we care about another algorithm? Well, the reason we care about, so by the way, first of all, let me redefine the shortest path algorithm once, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So for the purpose of describing Bellman-Ford, I'm going to assume that I have a directed graph. Okay, it just makes the discussion simpler. Bellman-Ford works even if you do not have directed graphs, but just for the purpose of this lecture, let's assume that it's a directed graph. But now there is something else that I'm allowing, which I did not when we discussed Dijkstra, which are negative edges. Okay, so now I am allowing negative length edges in my graph. So as you can see in this picture, there are some edges which are of negative length. Okay, now if you ask me that, okay, why do we want to study this problem? So from my perspective, well, you should be curious of whether the same algorithm works if I have negative edges. So from a math point of view, it's already interesting. But if you really ask me, this actually has some practical modeling aspects. So for example, if you are trying to model a financial transaction using graphs, then what you can imagine is, you know, buying something will actually cost you money. So that's a negative length edge. Whereas sort of selling something is going to give you some profit, which is a positive length. And now you can model financial transactions by, you know, taking the, you know, maybe you are managing a set of inventories or something. Then you can effectively model them and model the buying and selling using edges in your graph, and then I don't know, doing some operation or something. Okay, so there are applications when you might need to consider negative edges. But nonetheless, what we are interested in, you know, technically, what's the bottleneck? Why? I mean, why do we need another algorithm? And yeah, let's see. Okay, so here is the point that negative length edges completely screws up Dijkstra's algorithm. Okay, so remember in the proof also we had crucially used the fact that all the edge lengths are non-negative. It can be zero, by the way, so that does not affect Dijkstra, but it cannot be negative. Now it turns out that negative length edges completely screws up Dijkstra, and Okay, so and then I would encourage you to find an example where Dijkstra will actually give you a wrong answer. Okay, so I encourage you to find that example. You can easily make this example even with 3 vertices, I think. Okay, so just try it out after this lecture. Okay, so Soham is asking the following question, that can't we handle the negative edges issue by simply doing a transformation in my graph? So what he's suggesting is, why don't I add a very large constant value to every edge in my graph? Okay, this will effectively make all the edges positive. Yeah, and then I will just run Dijkstra's algorithm. Okay, so of course that's a possible fix. Okay, in fact that's one of the obvious fixes that should come to your mind. Unfortunately, this also fails. Okay. Shashank, so original distances you can still find, right? If you solve the problem in your modified graph, you are adding a constant value, a fixed constant value to every edge, right? So all you have to do is you have to subtract the number of, no, but if you know the path, then you can always do that. I mean, I don't see why that's an issue. So if you find a path in your modified graph and you have a distance, then computing the distance in the original graph is just subtracting some quantity from it, right? And you know the path, of course, so you have to decrease the amount by those many times. That should not be a problem, but I claim that this will still give you a wrong answer. Okay, so think about it. So one hint is the kind of examples where this is going to fail is where no, Priyansh, that is sort of a slightly vague thing. What I'm saying is, even if, okay, so here is my claim. Even if all the edges are positive length, okay, even if, so here is a big claim that I'm making. Even if all the edges are positive and you do this transformation, even then Dijkstra will give you the wrong answer. No. Forget about negative cycles and all that. What I'm claiming is this idea of transforming the graph by adding a positive constant to every edge. This fails no matter what. I mean, you can create an example even without using negative edge lengths. Good. So Rishi has a very good point. So what he's saying is path lengths can be different. Okay. So that's a very big hint. Yeah. But I encourage all of you to think about it. Okay. So yeah, that is the right direction to think about it. That there might be instances where you can have shortest paths. First of all, you can have instances where there are multiple shortest paths, or maybe paths which have lengths that are very close to each other. Okay, but the number of hops or the number of edges are very different for these paths. And these are the examples where this idea is going to fail. Yeah, it's going to give you a wrong shortest path in the modified graph. Okay, so just try to figure out the example concretely, but that's exactly the idea that you should be using. No, Priyansh, it's not about whether you know or don't know. It's about the fact that Dijkstra will give you the wrong answer. So remember, what are we doing? We have a graph G, and now we are transforming it to a graph G prime by adding a large quantity. A large quantity. Okay. Now you are solving Dijkstra here. So solve using Dijkstra. Okay. So you solve using Dijkstra, but then the point is this algorithm is going to give you some path in G prime. What I claim is that path will not be the shortest path in G. It will still be the shortest path in G prime, but it will not be the shortest path in G. Okay, so try to find out that example. Yeah, some people are already starting to give the right answer, but just figure it out yourself. Yeah, it's a nice little exercise. Okay, so ये काम नहीं करेगा is the punchline. Okay, so we have to we require some other ideas in order to be able to handle negative edge lengths. But before going into that, we need to talk a bit about this negative cycle issue. Yeah, because as you will see that negative cycles are a mess to handle. Okay. So first of all, what is a negative cycle? Well, it's a cycle such that if you go around the cycle once, then the total length of the edges is negative. So here, if I look at, for example, this cycle, okay. So if I look at this cycle, then this is a negative cycle. Why? Because the total effective length of this cycle is -1. Okay. So if you add up all the numbers here, they will add up to -1, which is why this is a negative cycle. This is what we call negative cycles. Okay. Now here is the question. Why do you think negative cycles like is a very big issue as far as the shortest path problem is concerned? Okay, so Soham says we get stuck here. So what does it exactly mean by stuck? I'm not even talking about any algorithm. So is the problem defined now at all? Exactly, exactly, right? So the issue is the following, and that's exactly what I'm trying to say, that if there are negative cycles in my graph, then the shortest path problem is even hard to define now, because effectively some of the distances might become minus infinity. Okay, the shortest path from S to some vertex, it can potentially become minus infinity. In fact, if you think about, let's say, the vertex D here, yeah, I claim that the shortest path length is actually minus infinity. Why? Because, well, you can go from S to V, yeah, and then you can go around this cycle as many times as you want. अब घूमते रहो उसमें, and every time you traverse it once, your path length is going to drop. So then effectively that, and then you can, you can take the final edge or whatever. So what I'm trying to say here is that the distance from S to D in this graph is as small as you want. So it's not even well defined what the length of the path is. Okay. So negative cycles are a bit of a trouble here. So now this might lead us to reformulate our problem a little bit. So one possible reformulation is the following. By the way, is my voice fine now? Did it drop? Okay, great. Okay, so Alok is asking, won't it become? Thanks. Yeah. So what, Alok, what's your question? Okay, let's finish the discussing this slide and then maybe I can take your question. Okay, so now I might try to reformulate the problem a little bit. So what I ask you is to find the shortest path from the source to another vertex, which is cycle free. Okay, so everyone getting my question, what I'm trying to ask here? So, okay, maybe your graph contains a negative cycle, but I ask you to find the shortest path from S to D such that it will not use any cycle actually. So I want you to give me a cycle-free path, cycle-free shortest path in my graph. So remember, it's a different problem. It's not the same question that we had been asking so far. Now, of course, if all the lengths are positive, then these two are effectively the same question. Why? So why is it effectively the same? If all the edge lengths are positive, then this alternate formulation and our original problem, why are they exactly the same? Exactly. So because if all the edge lengths are positive, then it does not make sense to use a cycle in your solution. So whatever cycle there is, I mean, if there is a path that uses a cycle, you might as well remove the cycle and use the rest of the path and so on, if all the lengths are positive. But if all the lengths are negative, then, this is not true. Okay. So ye clear ho gaya. So I'm doing an alternate formulation now. Okay. So for instance, what is a feasible solution to my problem now? Let's say I want to find the shortest cycle-free path from S to D. So what is a feasible solution? Well, a feasible solution could be this path. Yeah, I don't know if that's a shortest cycle-free path from S to D or not, but that is one feasible solution. Probably this is the optimal one. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure, but maybe probably this is yeah. Okay. Okay. So how do we solve this problem now? Right? Is the question. it turns out that this problem is very hard to solve. Okay, so in fact, it turns out to be one of those problems that we dread to handle, which are known as the NP, so-called NP complete problems. So I'm not sure if many of you have heard about this term, or maybe if you have, then maybe it's not, you are not very familiar with the idea. So we will be talking about what NP complete means in some subsequent lectures. For now, it's enough for you to remember that this effectively means we do not know a polynomial time algorithm to solve the problem. Okay, so even after 50 years of research, we don't know whether there exists a polynomial time algorithm to solve this problem. Remember, I'm not claiming that there does not exist a polynomial time algorithm. It might as well exist somewhere. Maybe we are, as humans, we are just too stupid to find that algorithm. But it's widely believed that such an algorithm cannot exist. Okay, so there is a class of problem. There are lots and lots of problems which belong to this class. And this one is one such problem. So given a graph with negative edge lengths, find the shortest cycle-free path in the graph. This turns out to be an NP-complete problem. Okay, so we cannot be doing much here. Okay, if we want a fast runtime, then we cannot do much here. Okay, clear? Okay, so now we well, then we settle for the obvious thing. Okay, so here is our final formulation. So I ask you to find the shortest path from a source, or you tell me that there is a negative cycle in the graph. So you do one of the two. Okay, so if there is a negative cycle in your graph, then you just output that, hey, there is a negative cycle, so I don't want to even solve the shortest path problem. But agar negative cycle nahi hai, then you should correctly find the shortest path. Okay, so I'm changing the formulation a little bit so that now the problem is well defined. Any questions about this so far? Okay, so in particularly for this example, I'm just asking you to find an algorithm which will just output that, oh, there is a negative cycle, and then I won't ask you to find the shortest path. Please explain NP complete problem. Bhai, ye to 5 minutes mein nahi hoga. Well, effectively it means that we don't know a polynomial time algorithm to solve this problem. But we will talk about hardness towards the end of the course. Yeah. So then it will become slightly more clear what I'm talking about. But NP complete effectively means that oh, I see. The problem, okay, so what I'm trying to find is, so you are given a graph which have negative edges, yeah, and it can potentially have negative cycles, but I want you to find the path from S to some other vertex which avoids a cycle. So for this problem, you should output me this path. Yeah. So this is a cycle-free shortest path. So what I'm saying is finding a cycle-free shortest path is NP complete in general in a graph with negative edges. Okay. Good. Right. So now we go towards an algorithm, and as we will see that we effectively use a dynamic programming idea. Yeah. So we have seen greedy. Dijkstra is clearly a very, very greedy algorithm. It has a classical greedy flavor to it, and clearly it's not clear. It's not enough to handle negative edges. Okay. So by the way, so for today, what we are going to discuss is, okay, let me write this down. So I'm assuming no negative cycles. Okay, so for today's discussion, as we build up the dynamic programming gradually, we will assume that there are no negative cycles in my graph. But as we will see that in order to be able to output the other thing that, oh, there is a negative cycle, all we need to do is modify this algorithm only a little bit. So today we will design the algorithm assuming that our graph does not have a negative cycle, but we will see that we'll be able to modify this a little and also handle the case when there is a negative cycle. Handle matlab we just need to output that there is a negative cycle. Okay. Okay. So let's now start thinking about dynamic programming. Okay. So I need to find the shortest path, and I am claiming that I want to build a dynamic program. So remember, whenever I want to build a dynamic programming, I think we have talked enough times by now. We need to think about the optimal substructure. Okay. So any like initial ideas of what do you think an optimal substructure should say here? So you are trying to find the shortest path from a source to some vertex. So what do you think could be a potential optimal substructure? So I forget about defining subproblems and all that for now, but just to start building ideas, what is the optimal substructure which you hope that, okay, if this was true, then maybe I can build a dynamic programming. So what is it that should come to your mind? तो मान लीजिए ये आपका एक शॉर्टेस्ट पाथ है. नहीं, उत्कृष्ट, डोंट थिंक अबाउट, हाँ वो तो बाद में आएगा, बट ऑल आई एम आस्किंग इज, सपोज आई गिव यू दिस शॉर्टेस्ट पाथ, सो दिस इज यू एंड दिस इज वी. तो ये शॉर्टेस्ट पाथ है. What kind of substructure do you think will exist for this problem which will help you design a dynamic programming? So right, तो सपोज ये आपका शॉर्टेस्ट पाथ है, सपोज ये S to V ये आपका शॉर्टेस्ट पाथ है, ठीक है, to V ये मैंने दे दिया आपको. So what do you want to claim about any sub problem now? So what is the substructure is what I'm asking, not implementation. Implementation bhul jaiye. So what is it that I should be able to argue? V1, V2, V3, V4. So if I want to draw parallels with problems that we have seen so far, for example, let's say knapsack or something. So what is it that we wish for? कि अच्छा अगर ये होता तो शायद मैं कुछ कर सकता. So how do we define a recurrence is the question. Very good. Okay. So what Dipankar is saying is the following, that right. Okay. So what Dipankar is saying is the following, that agar ye hota ki, let's say I'm looking at this optimal path. Okay. This is one particular path in my graph which I give you, right? It's effectively the optimal path from S to V. Now agar ye hota ki, अगर मैं ये पाथ का बस ये वाला पार्ट देखता हूं, okay, I'm forgetting about the final edge in my path. Remember, this is an optimal solution to S to V. I am taking all the edges except the last one. Okay, then I wish that this is the shortest path from S to V4. That is what we should wish for. Well, because that's a clearly very nice optimal substructure property. I don't know whether it's true or not, but all I'm saying is that is what you should wish for. कि अगर आपने लास्ट वाला जो एज है वो हटा दिया, तो ये जो पेनल्टीमेट वर्टेक्स है, तो बाकी जो पाथ है, this should form an optimal solution to the problem of finding a shortest path from S to V4. ठीक है, सबको क्लियर हो गया ये? So this is how your intuition should work. Yeah. So wish is, if S to V is shortest path from sorry, let's give this path some name. If P is shortest path from S to V, then this should imply that, let's say this part is P prime. P prime is shortest path from S to V4. ठीक है? Okay. Now, is this true? ये तो wish लिख दिया हमने, but now can we claim that this has to be always true? And if yes, then how do we prove that this is true? तो ठीक है, व्हाट इज माय क्लेम? माय क्लेम इज कि अगर S2V शॉर्ट, ये शॉर्टेस्ट पाथ है, तो ये जो S2V4 तक का सब पाथ है P प्राइम, this also has to be the shortest path from S2V prime, S2V4. So why should this be true? Well, is the same type of cut paste contradiction that you have used for all your dynamic programmings. Okay, okay. So now I will hand wave a little bit, but we will do this formally when we define subproblems and all. So the observation is the following: कि suppose P prime is not the shortest path from S to V4. Okay, suppose it's not the shortest path. So then there is some other path. Okay, then there is some other path from S to V4. है ना? But अगर ऐसा है, so then this clearly is contradicting the fact that P is an optimal solution to the problem of finding the shortest path from S to V. Why is that? Well, because I can take this red path and I can just append the last edge and I will have a shorter path from S to V, which is a contradiction. तो S to V अगर optimal होना है, तो ये सब path को भी optimal होना पड़ेगा. Okay, and this now should be directly in the ballpark of the things which we like when we try to think of dynamic programming. Okay, is this clear to everyone? So this was just deliberately hand wavy. So let's now try to make this concrete. Okay, so now tell me, how should we define my subproblems? So अगर ये intuition मुझे करना है, तो I think some people were already suggesting. So how should you define your subproblem? So let me call this subproblem, give some name. So let's say path is the name of the subproblem. So what should be the parameter of this subproblem, and how should we write the recurrence? Okay, good. So first of all, Soham, what is the subproblem? ये तो recurrence लिख दिया आपने directly. Okay, so I think, so first of all, there are a few points, right? First of all, you have to label your vertices in a certain way, right? Because remember, this path thing is a recurrence, it's a function, so it will take only some parameters, right? So let the vertices be labeled as 1, 2, 3, and so on up to n-1. Okay, why n-1? Because एक वो s vertex है, उसको मैं छोड़ रहा हूँ अभी के लिए, ठीक है? और maybe s equal to 0, ठीक है? s is equal to 0. So the source is 0 और बाकी को मैंने कुछ arbitrary label कर दिया. Arbitrary ही करना पड़ेगा because I have no way of knowing how to label them or whatever. I just use some arbitrary label. Okay. Now I want to write the following DP. I want to write path I. Okay. Okay. So what Soham is suggesting is the following, that I should write minimum, okay, over some, I don't know, some maybe ji plus the path to j. Okay, right? That's what he's suggesting. But I mean, will this work actually? So remember, what is the idea of writing a recurrence? The idea of writing a recurrence is that you should somehow, right, you should somehow be able to decrease the size of your subproblem. But यहाँ पे it's not even clear. अगर मैं ऐसे formulate करता हूँ, it's not even clear that you are decreasing the size of the subproblem in any way, and I will tell you why. So suppose this is the path to I. ठीक है? Now the problem is maybe I'm looking at this last edge, which is j. ठीक है? तो मान लीजिए j is actually bigger than I. Okay? तो आपने effectively क्या किया? Well, you started with a subproblem at path I, but then when you wrote the recurrence, you are actually referring to a larger indexed subproblem. ये हो सकता है? I mean, J could be, for example, I plus 2, right? And that's a problem. Do you see the issue? So remember, whenever we were talking about dynamic programming, ये जब मैं recurrence लिखता था, there was some monotonicity in the way we write the subproblems. I mean, when you write a recurrence, you should be able to express your subproblem by a smaller subproblem. So जब मैं knapsack लिखा, for example, it was whatever profit I comma W is equal to the minimum of profit I minus 1 comma W and profit of I minus 1 comma W minus WI. So there was some monotonicity. The subproblem was decreasing. The indices were decreasing. But यहाँ तो it's all over the place because you have no way of knowing before what kind of vertices are there on the shortest path from S to I. So how are you even going to label the vertices so that your indices actually decrease? Okay. So you are not decreasing. Okay, great. So here is what Kevin is saying, but eventually we will reach closer to the source. Okay. That's a great point actually, which will lead us to the next idea. So what Kevin is saying that we will eventually reach closer to the source in some sense. Okay. The trouble is this fact is not being reflected in the current subproblem definition. Okay, it's true. Maybe it's true that you will reach closer to the source, although it's not very well defined what closer to the source mean or why should that be true. But somehow that thing has to be reflected in the subproblem definition itself. Okay, that when you are writing a smaller subproblem, it should mean a subproblem where you are closer to the source. So what is an obvious way to modify your subproblem now? Okay, is the question clear? So what Kevin is saying that one way to say that my subproblem size is decreasing is to be able to say that when I talk about a smaller subproblem, I should talk about somehow I should be closer to the source, whatever that means. What I'm asking is just by using vertices, it's impossible for you to model. Not impossible, but it's very tricky for you to model. But can I modify my subproblem in a certain way so that this now becomes possible? Can I explicitly say this thing in the subproblem that I am actually reaching closer to the source? Okay, so it's not obvious, right? And I think that's the main insight for whatever we are doing. So we are now taking a slightly different definition of a subproblem. So what is the subproblem that we are defining? And this is another example which shows that DP में अगर आपने subproblem ढंग से define कर दिया, then the rest will just be slam dunk. Okay, and this is a glaring example of that. All the insight is in the definition of the subproblem. वो एक बार हो गया, बाकी आप 2 मिनट में उसको pseudo code में convert कर लेंगे. ठीक है? So here is how I define my subproblems. So I call path V comma I to be the shortest path from S to V that is allowed to use at most I number of edges. Okay. So previously what we were attempting was we were just trying to design an algorithm. We were trying to design a subproblem that just used one parameter, which was V. But then we saw that we run into all kinds of trouble that, you know, उसका label छोटा नहीं हो रहा है, एक बार बड़ा हो सकता है, एक बार छोटा हो सकता है, तो subproblem कैसे define होगा, recurrence कैसे define होगा, yeah, and all that problem. And now, as Kevin is suggesting, somehow we should be able to reach closer to the source. Okay. So here is one way that might facilitate it. I define path Vi to be the shortest path from S to V that is allowed to use at most I number of edges. तो मैंने एक budget दे दिया आपको कि आप बस I edges use कर सकते हो at most. And now what is going to be your shortest path? Okay, so this is my subproblem definition. Let's see if we understand this. Okay, so if I take this definition, then what is going to be path? Let's say okay, what is going to be path E comma 2? What is the answer for path E comma 2? It's 8, right? So it's exactly 8. Okay. But what is the definition of path E comma 1? It's infinity. Yeah. So it's infinity because there is no path from. So remember, so this is the difference. Yeah. So this is what this new parameter is doing now for me. Because अगर मैं आपको budget दे देता हूँ कि well you have to reach S, you have to reach E from S just by using one edge, there is no way you can do this in this graph. So the answer, so the optimal answer to that is effectively infinity. Yes. Okay. Let's see. What is path E comma 3? Yeah, it's the minimum distance, but yeah, it does not matter. What is E comma 3? That's also 8. Why is that also 8? Well, यहाँ पे okay, so there is one other choice that I have now. ठीक है? What is the other choice that I have? The other choice that I have is a 3-length path. What is that 3-length path? I can go here, I can go here, and I can go here. Okay, but इसका total cost 9 है, right? But if I just use the 2-length path, तो इसका then cost 8 है. So by my definition, that should be the optimal answer now. Okay, because remember, by definition, I am allowing you at most I edges. You don't necessarily have to use all the budget. You can use lesser budgets. But just to complete this example, अगर मैं इसको मान लीजिए बहुत कम कर देता, मैं इसको -4 कर देता, okay, then what would have been the answer? Okay, then what would have been the answer for oh, फिर तो ये भी छोटा हो जाएगा. Okay, anyway, yeah, that's not good, that's not what I want to do. Let's see, let me modify it in a different way. Suppose मैं इसको कम कर दिया, yeah, suppose ये 9 के जगह कुछ -2 है. Okay, then what is the answer for path E comma 3 now? It's -2, right? Why it's -2? Because now I should take this 3-length path, yeah, which has a cost of -2. तो अगर ये cost ऐसा था, ऐसा होता तो फिर ये. And remember, but path E2 is still 8. ठीक है? Everyone understands this. The answer to path E comma 2 is still 8 because there is no way to reach from S to E using a path of only 2 hops and which has a lower cost than 8. ठीक है? Okay, तो ये हो गया मेरा सब प्रॉब्लम डेफिनेशन अभी. And if you go back to Kevin's initial question, this parameter now effectively controls that you are getting closer to the source, because as you have imagined, now when I write the recurrence, this I thing is going to decrease for me. Okay, so let's see all how all that happens. Okay, even before going that, now here is a question. So remember, I always, when you write your exams, I always insist that you should write the range of your parameters. ठीक है, हमने लिख दिया pi, तो I क्या है, मतलब I 0 से n है कि क्या है, k से n है क्या, मतलब you should write it properly, that what should be the range. तो चलिए यहाँ पे I ask the following question: what is the length of what is the effective range of I? Okay, so Soham is saying it has to be mod of E. So mod of E is clearly an upper bound. But I claim ki mod of E is a, can you give me a better upper bound? Okay, Rishi is saying N. Why is it N? Mod E is clearly the correct answer because it cannot be larger than the number of edges in your graph. Okay, but right, max can be in line graph. नहीं, line graph नहीं. Normal graph में भी path तो. Okay, so some people are saying that the answer should be mod of V -1, or let's say n -1. So why can we claim that the length is n -1? no cycles. Okay. Otherwise, we will have a cycle in a path. Okay, so then what is the contradiction then? If I have a cycle in a path, then what is the problem there? I mean, now I have negative edges and all, right? So वो आप नहीं कह सकते कि cycle नहीं हो सकता या ये सब नहीं कह सकते. Very good. Okay, very good. So because negative cycles are not allowed. Okay, so let's see. What we are saying here is the following. तो मान लीजिए ये एक path है, ठीक है? So let's say this is V, and your path uses more than n-1 number of edges. ठीक है? तो okay, we are claiming just for the sake of contradiction that there is a shortest path from S to V which uses more than n-1 number of edges, because we are trying to claim that the length of the shortest path cannot be more than n-1. But let's say for the purpose of contradiction कि ये हो रहा है. तो अगर ये हो रहा है, then we claim that there has to be a cycle on this path, right? Because there are n vertices. तो अगर आपका n vertices है and the number of edges is more than n, it's a connected graph, then clearly there has to be a cycle along this path. तो मेरा shortest path कैसे दिख रहा है फिर? Well, it starts from S, it comes here, right? Then it takes this cycle somehow and then it goes to V. This is how it's looking like. Okay, अगर उसको n या उससे ज्यादा vertices होना है तो. But what does that mean? What does that say about this cycle? Well, it says that this has to be a negative cycle. Okay, so if SV shortest path has greater than equals to n edges, this implies there exists a cycle in the path C, and this implies C is a negative cycle. Okay, और कोई ऑप्शन है ही नहीं, क्योंकि ये अगर नेगेटिव साइकिल नहीं है तो then obviously this straight path is a shorter path. Then that's a contradiction. So the only way this cycle wala path can be a shorter path than the red path is if C is a negative cycle. But negative cycles for now we are not allowing. So we say that our graph does not have a negative cycle. तो अगर मेरे ग्राफ में नेगेटिव साइकिल नहीं है तो any shortest path cannot be using more than n-1 edges. ठीक है? Absolutely clear to everyone? Great. So then this is my range, right? So I will have a sub problem for every V, yeah, and for I ranging from 0 to n-1. ठीक है? Okay. तो चलिए अभी recurrence लिखते हैं. That's our next task, right? So let's say V comma I. तो क्या होगा recurrence? कौन बताएगा? So what is the easy case? So as usual, there will be 2 or 3 cases, right? So what is the easy case of the recurrence? नहीं, वो तो base cases है. No, I'm not talking about base cases. So I'm trying to write the recurrence for a general V and general I. Well, let's say, yeah, not 0. Base case, yeah, P V comma 0 to 0 होगा. That's very good actually. Those are the base cases. But in general, let's say I'm trying to write a recurrence for. Okay, so what is PVI? So again, you should always visualize the optimal solution, right? It becomes much more easy to. Okay, तो ये V है, ये S है. Fantastic. Okay. So okay, so both Kevin and Taral have written something. Okay, Taral तो सब कुछ लिख दिया एकदम से. Okay, good. So there could be 2 cases, right? One case could be the following: which is that देखिए यहाँ पे आपका बजट कितना है, यहाँ पे आपका बजट है I, okay? So one case could be that your optimal shortest path from S to V, this is case one. So optimal path from S to V is not actually using I number of edges, it's actually using less than I number of edges. अगर ये केस है तो फिर recurrence क्या होगा? So if I tell you that the shortest path from S to V using a budget I actually does not use the entire budget. It uses a budget which is less than I. Then which subproblem does it boil down to? Then it's already calculated, which means it's P V I minus 1. ठीक है? Remember, this is case 1. So V not using the entire budget. ठीक है? That is one case. What could be the other case? The other case is, well, it's actually using the entire budget. ठीक है? तो वो केस भी हमें देखना पड़ेगा. अब वो केस में थोड़ा सा non-triviality है. So let's see why. Okay, so suppose I tell you that the final edge is U. The penultimate vertex on this optimal path is U. तो अभी हम case 2 में है, where the shortest path from S to V is actually using up all the budget. It's using I number of edges. And I also tell you that the last edge is UV. Then what should be the recurrence? Okay. Okay. So Vishwajit, one step at a time. Right. So I'm absolutely correct. Yeah, Vishwajit is one step ahead. But so अगर मैं आपको बोल देता हूं कि the final edge is UV, and I also am in the case where the shortest path from S to V is using up its entire budget, so then I should just write the following recurrence. U comma I minus 1 plus the length of UV. ठीक है? Okay. So this is case 2. But the only thing that is missing here is there are some sub cases of case 2. Why do I say that? Well, because यहाँ पे मैंने आपको बोल दिया कि U is the penultimate vertex, but you have no way of knowing what the penultimate vertex is. You are solving a shortest path problem. So if before computing the shortest path, you don't know what this vertex U is, right? So how should I handle that? Okay, everyone understands? So I don't know what this vertex U is, but yeah, okay, ठीक है. So because I know that, okay, very good. So U का options क्या है? So if I am at a vertex V, so what are the only possible options of V? Well, the only possible options for U are the vertices which have some outgoing edge to V. Remember, it's a directed graph. तो ये U1 हो सकता है, ये U2 भी हो सकता है, U3 भी हो सकता है. ये तीनों में से ही कोई होगा लास्ट एज, इससे और तो कुछ नहीं हो सकता. तो I will just take a minimum. So you take a minimum over all UV belongs to E of this quantity. ठीक है? और पूरा रिकरेंस के लिए आपको ये दोनों के बीच मिन लेना पड़ेगा. ठीक है? Everyone digested this? है ना? ठीक है? So now I have effectively, I have been able to effectively write a recurrence, which is a proper recurrence, because the subproblem sizes are going down. And what is controlling that fact? This parameter I. Okay. Remember, without this I, we had no way of controlling that the size of the subproblem is going down. Said that, let me tell you, there is also a way to design a similar algorithm using just one parameter, but that's way more complicated. Okay, it's not as simple as this thing. And this is the original formulation by Bellman-Ford. And yeah, effectively, it's believed that the entire paradigm of dynamic programming started because of the discovery of this algorithm. So it's attributed to Bellman-Ford. So it's an important algorithm for you to realize. And what I hate, honestly, is all over the internet. Uh, all over the internet, it's actually Bellman-Ford is written in a cryptic way. We will write that cryptic pseudocode at the end, but reading that pseudocode, you have no way of realizing why this should give you the shortest path. At least I did not have any intuition of why this gives the shortest path. So they will run a loop v minus one time, and they will keep updating some stuff. So, but this is what effectively is going on. Okay. So Kevin is asking, why do we explicitly need p v I minus 1 since we are saying less than equal to I? Nay, Kevin, do you mean the first case? No, Kevin, but when you write a recurrence, आप recurrence को तो आपको recurrence लिखना पड़ेगा, right? So you should write a smaller sub problem here. नहीं तो कैसे चलेगा? आप क्या लिखोगे? PVI is equal to PVI. You don't need that case. No, you need that case, right? Because see, these are yeah, so what Kevin is asking is, why do we need case 1? No, Kevin, I think you need case 1. What do you mean? I mean, here nahi to kaise karoge? Because here you will only compute the paths which are I minus 1 or less. But मान लो कि जो आपके neighbors तक का path है, वो actually I minus 1 use कर लेता है. Then your case 2 will actually capture the shortest path that uses exactly I edges. But then you will miss out on a possibility jahan pe you are not using one edge, right? At least one. I mean, no. It's very crucial, right? Why do you say it's not needed? The first thing is needed. What do you mean? You can reach here by maybe through pu comma I minus 2, right? Yeah, but you have to, okay, of course it's been considered for a smaller I, but you have to consider that solution, right? Because then you might have no, why is it covered in pu I minus 1? That should be covered in pu comma I minus 2 and not I minus 1. Because u I minus 1 mein jo hai, that yeah, because those will yeah, then you will miss out on some solutions, right? Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll think about it. Okay, so what we'll do is we will stop here today. So we will stop at the recurrence today. So the next time what we will do is we will write a pseudocode, which as you can imagine is very easy now. You can write some easy base cases as somebody. Let me write the base cases. The base case kya hoga? I think if many of you have already said. So P of S comma 0, that should be equal to 0. Okay. And what is the other base case? P of V comma 0 is equal to infinity. Yeah. Okay. So these would be my base cases. Oh, actually, this is I. Sorry. This is I. This is I for all I. Yeah. So from S to S, it's always 0. No matter what budget you give it, it will always return 0. So ye mera base case ho gaya. And for all other vertices, if you allow 0 budget, then it's just infinity. Okay. Okay. Alok is asking a great question. So what he's saying is, agar kisi loop mein second case nahi hua, so we can break there. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's one of the optimization that you can do for this algorithm, but we will gradually build towards them, right? So what we will do is next time we will write the basic pseudocode first, then we will see that so the way I have written the recurrence here, No, Soham, it's highly non-trivial. I think he might have seen it or whatever. Yeah, it's highly non-trivial. You don't have to understand it now. Okay. So okay, so the way I've written the recurrence is, again, you will be using a DP table which is of dimension whatever v square. So we will do a lot of optimization. First of all, we will see that we don't need the DP table. If we just care about the distances, then we effectively don't need the DP table. Yeah. And then also we have to address other issues. So if there is a negative cycle, how to detect the negative cycle, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's do them next time. Upper bound mod E. No, Rishi, upper bound is not mod E. Upper bound is mod V minus 1. That's what you want me to repeat, right? So Rishi, the upper bound for I is V minus 1, not E. Oh, you mean the upper bound is mod of E? Okay, because you know, if you take any path, okay, the reason is similar. Yeah, actually, I should not have said that so casually. So again, if you have more than E number of edges, then what does it mean? Then you are using the same edge twice, right? But why should you do that? So what is the only case when you should do that? So suppose the total number of edges in your shortest path, right? It uses more than E number of edges. But uska matlab kya hai? You are using some edge more than once. But why should you do that?